Okay, so I wanted to make a quick video highlighting a pretty cool case study that took place this summer involving one athlete, Ryan Jaslow, and his recovery from a pretty significant ankle injury that probably involved a pretty bad sprain of the peroneal tendon. One pretty cool thing was the use of force plates. We typically use force plates, which are those things that you stand on and jump on, and you see them in my Instagram story all the time. We typically use them as a form of assessment for our athletes. It's pretty cool. We get to test them pre, test them post, see the progress. We can see their individual weaknesses, whether they're a power deficient athlete or whether they are a reactive deficient athlete, and then we can customize training accordingly. However, this most recent application of the force plates was a little bit different, and we used them as a form of biofeedback to help expedite Ryan Jaslow in his recovery from a pretty big, significant, I'll say, ankle injury. So just kind of speaking broadly, some definitions. Neuromuscular training and biofeedback, they sound fancy. They're not really that fancy, right? So neuromuscular training by definition is an intervention designed to affect and change biomechanical risk factors with the goal of reducing injury, and in this case, expediting return from injury. So it's this intervention. What is it really? Typically, like what we're talking about are drills, right? Drills that we can help control biomechanics of a given movement pattern, and we think that will make someone a better athlete, reduce the risk of injury, whatever it is. So the problem with a lot of drills are that they are predicated upon subjective feedback, most notably like cueing. So we tell an athlete, all right, do this, do that. And this subjective feedback really kind of is difficult or problematic because of its subjectivity. How do we know if it's working, right? So by implementing biofeedback, we get an objective form of feedback. So it's utilizing biological feedback in real time, typically with hopes of improving accuracy of functional tasks. So as you'll see, the functional task in this case is improving jumping, sprinting, and more specifically doing a clean pull. All right. So what we typically did was we had these force plates. Ryan Jaslow would do a clean pull on the force plates, and we would look at his total power output in the form of newtons, and we would look left to right, left leg, right leg. Obviously, if there's this significant ankle injury, what tends to happen is there's this pain avoidance, where an athlete, even though they may be ready to utilize both limbs equally, the brain says, hey, I don't want to put too much pressure on this limb, and they favor one side versus the other. So by showing Jaslow or a participant kind of what's taking place and the discrepancy, they are more likely to kind of balance out the utilization of both limbs. So what you'll see in this video is Ryan Jaslow doing a clean pull while standing on the force plates. You'll also see the tablet in every single video, and you'll see 3 lines. The white line represents the total amount of force produced with the limbs combined, and that's obviously going to be the biggest peak. The other 2 lines are the orange and blue lines, and those are the ones we're really paying attention to because those represent the force production for each limb independently, the left and the right. And essentially what we were looking for is to see A, if there were any asymmetries, which there were, and B, if we can kind of tighten up the difference between those peaks between pulls. So I'll play the video. The first peak of every pull represents the actual pull. The other stuff is a little bit of noise during the eccentric. And what we essentially did was we went through every set, and after every single set, I would show him the force production for each limb. There was even times where I would just put the video out in front of him so he can actually see what was going on. So, what took place? Well, this is week 1 of utilizing the force plates. And what you can see here is the orange and blue lines and a fairly large discrepancy. it represents 125, maybe 150 Newton difference. And in terms of total force production, this equates to something like a 10.5% difference, give or take. So as I said earlier, listen, if there's a 2, 3, 4% difference in force production, it's not a big deal. But when you get into that 10 to 15% range, these are KPIs, key performance indicators of future injury. So we want to try to be as symmetrical as possible, right? And beyond this is just one pull. Week 1, we were really seeing regularly between a 5 and 15% difference between pulls. So 3 weeks, we use them week after week, and 3 weeks later, right, voila. This is pretty cool. This is an entire set because we typically did sets of 3, and you can see the peaks that are circled here in red are nearly perfectly identical. So I think this was a very, very cool utilization of force plates in the form of biofeedback. Now the question is, do I think he could have done this without the force plates? And the answer is yeah, absolutely, right? He could have kind of gotten rid of this symmetry, over time, right? However, I do believe utilizing the force plates and implementing that biofeedback really expedited the process to get him back to sprinting as quickly as possible.